20,000 Roman soldiers entered a forest in 9 AD. 3 days later, an entire army had vanished. Not defeated, erased. No great siege, no glorious battlefield, just rain, trees, mud, and a betrayal so devastating Rome would remember it for generations. The man responsible was not hiding among the enemy. He had earned Rome's trust, sat beside its leaders, and learned its secrets. The architect of the disaster is not hiding among the trees. He sits beside the Roman governor, sharing meals, exchanging smiles, earning trust. Rome gave him citizenship, rank, military command, and honor. They taught him how Roman armies marched, fought, supplied themselves, and ultimately conquered nations. Everything that follows begins with trust. Trust placed in the wrong man. Trust that becomes the foundation of one of history's most devastating ambushes. 3 days. One betrayal, one decision ignored. Together they will destroy 3 legions and change the future of Europe forever. This is not merely a battle story. It is a carefully prepared trap built over years, then unleashed with terrifying precision. Before it ends, an emperor will mourn, an empire will panic, and thousands of soldiers will disappear beneath rain, mud, and forest darkness. Roman writers remembered the catastrophe for generations, not because Rome lost battles before, but because this defeat felt impossible. In the 1st century, Rome seemed unstoppable. Its armies crossed mountains, deserts, and seas, absorbing kingdoms and turning rivals into provinces. The Roman legion was a machine of discipline. Thousands of soldiers trained to move together, fight together, and survive battles that destroyed lesser armies. On open ground, few enemies could challenge Rome. But forests were different. Trees broke formations, mud slowed movement, visibility vanished. Beyond the Rhine River stretched Germania. Vast forests, scattered tribes, uncertain roads, and territory only partially understood by Roman officials. Many Roman leaders assumed Germania would follow the path of Gaul, conquer it, tax it, govern it, Romanize it. They misunderstood the people living there. Germanic tribes were divided, but fiercely protective of their independence and traditions. Roman taxation created resentment. Demands for tribute reached communities that had never answered to distant rulers before. Roman courts followed. Tribal disputes increasingly passed through Roman officials, applying Roman law on Germanic soil. To Roman administrators, these changes meant progress. To many tribal leaders, they felt like humiliation disguised as civilization. Watching closely was a man Rome believed completely loyal. His Roman name was Arminius. Born the son of a Germanic chieftain, Arminius had spent years inside the Roman system after being taken as a political hostage. He learned Latin, served in Roman campaigns, earned citizenship, commanded auxiliary troops. Few outsiders understood Rome better than he did. Arminius knew Roman strengths intimately. More importantly, he understood where those strengths became weaknesses. Years of military service convinced him of something dangerous. Rome could be defeated, under the right conditions, in the right place. In 7 AD, Rome appointed a new governor to Germania, Publius Quinctilius Varus, an experienced administrator trusted by Emperor Augustus. Varus valued order, law, and obedience. When Arminius offered guidance, intelligence, and friendship, the governor welcomed him without hesitation. While Varus trusted him publicly, Arminius worked in secret. Tribal leaders met quietly across Germania, discussing something rare: unity against Rome. The tribes often fought one another. Arminius offered a different vision: not permanent unity, just long enough to destroy a common enemy. His message was simple: stay silent, wait patiently, strike together. One mistake would ruin everything. Among the Romans marched Marcus, a veteran centurion of the 17th Legion. 21 years of service had taught him confidence in Roman discipline. The night before departure, a Germanic noble named Segestes requested an urgent audience with Varus. His warning was direct. Arminius was planning a betrayal. The reported rebellion was a lie. The governor was walking into a trap. Segestes urged immediate action. Arrest Arminius tonight. Question him. Delay the march until the reports are verified.
Varus dismissed the accusation. Segestes and Arminius were political rivals. Personal grudges, he believed, explained the warning better than conspiracy. That single decision sealed the fate of thousands. But nobody inside the Roman camp understood it yet. The next morning, Arminius shared breakfast with Varus.
They discussed routes, supplies, and the rebellion supposedly waiting ahead. Then Arminius mounted his horse, smiled, and rode away to gather auxiliary forces. Varus watched him leave without suspicion. Those forces were not gathering to reinforce Rome. They were preparing to destroy it. At dawn, the column began moving. 3 legions, auxiliary troops, civilians, wagons, animals, and supplies stretched across miles of forest road. Marcus noticed the weather first. Thick clouds rolled overhead. Wind pushed through the trees. The air felt wrong. Marcus noticed younger soldiers watching the storm nervously. He laughed and told them Rome had marched through worse. By sunset, he no longer believed it. Rain arrived suddenly. Heavy sheets of cold water turned paths into mud and transformed the march into a struggle. The column stretched farther apart. Units lost visual contact. Wagons slowed movement. Communication became increasingly difficult. From a ridge above the forest, Arminius watched exactly what he had hoped to see. The Roman formation was unraveling. He had spent months studying the terrain. Every swamp, ridge, pathway, and bottleneck had been selected for a reason. The first signal echoed through the trees. Not a Roman trumpet, something unfamiliar, something every hidden warrior recognized immediately. Spears erupted from the forest. Men fell before many Romans even understood they were under attack. Marcus shouted for formation. His soldiers tried to obey, but the terrain shattered every attempt to create a proper battle line. A legionary raised his shield and pushed forward. Branches caught the rim. Mud trapped his boots. Seconds later, he disappeared beneath spears. Another soldier attempted to throw his pilum. Dense woodland ruined the cast. The weapon struck branches instead of enemies. Roman equipment had been designed for organized warfare. Here, every advantage seemed to work against its owner. Germanic warriors moved differently, faster, lighter, appearing and disappearing between trees before Roman soldiers could respond effectively. From hidden positions, Arminius directed attacks across multiple sections of the column. Each strike increased confusion and isolation. Arminius watched Roman units drift farther apart. Years of preparation were unfolding exactly as planned. He raised a hand. The forest moved. Rumors spread quickly. One of the legionary eagles might already have fallen. No one knew whether the story was true. As daylight faded, the Romans managed to build a temporary camp. They were exhausted, soaked, and increasingly uncertain. Marcus sat beside a fire cleaning mud from his sword. Around him, conversation had almost completely disappeared. Somewhere beyond the camp perimeter, prisoners screamed in the darkness. Nobody could see what was happening. Everyone could hear it. A young recruit asked Marcus whether they would reach safety tomorrow. The centurion answered yes. It was the last promise he would ever make. At dawn, Varus ordered the march to continue. Open ground remained the objective. Open ground meant survival. Most Romans still believed escape was possible. They did not know Arminius had prepared one final obstacle waiting ahead. Day 3. The survivors pushed forward through rain and exhaustion. Every step carried them deeper into terrain they did not understand. Ahead lay a narrow passage near Calcrisa. A ridge rose on one side. Swampy ground stretched across the other. Scouts returned with disturbing news. A barrier blocked the route ahead. Nobody knew who built it. Nobody understood its purpose. To the Romans, it looked like a path to survival. To Arminius, it was the final stage of the trap. Months earlier, Germanic warriors had quietly built a defensive wall there. Earth, timber, branches, and moss concealed its true size. The Romans saw it only when they were almost upon it. The wall seemed to emerge directly from the forest itself.
The column stopped. Confusion spread instantly. Men crowded together. Officers shouted conflicting orders through rain and chaos. Then the attack began. Thousands of Germanic warriors surged from concealed positions. Spears rained down from the ridge while more fighters struck from behind. The Romans had nowhere to deploy properly. The wall blocked the front. The swamp trapped one flank. The forest swallowed the other. From high ground, Arminius watched the battlefield unfold exactly as planned. Years of preparation were reaching their conclusion. Marcus saw soldiers he had served beside for decades fall around him. Veterans, officers, standard-bearers, all disappearing into the mud. The chain of command collapsed. Centurions died. Messengers vanished. Orders stopped reaching the men who needed them. One standard disappeared, then another. Units that had marched together across half the empire began fighting as isolated groups. Marcus tried to rally survivors around a damaged standard. For a moment, a small knot of Romans held their ground. Then another wave hit. The formation shattered. Men were pushed apart, dragged down, or forced back into the swamp.
Marcus lifted the damaged standard one final time. For a moment, scattered Romans rallied around him before another assault swallowed them. Nearby, Verus remained mounted despite his wounds. Blood ran down one arm as he watched the disaster unfold. For the first time, he understood Segestes' warning. The old chief had told the truth, every word. The rebellion was false. The intelligence was false. The loyalty was false. The trap had been real from the beginning. Verus looked toward the forest and understood something else. Arminius had never truly belonged to Rome. He had spent years learning Roman methods, Roman assumptions, and Roman weaknesses. Now he was using all of them. A cry spread through the battlefield. Another eagle had fallen. The sacred standards of the 17th, 18th, and 19th legions were disappearing one by one into Germanic hands. Verus looked across the battlefield. Fallen standards, broken formations, dead officers. The empire he represented seemed to be collapsing before his eyes. Knowing capture was near, Verus chose death instead. He drew his sword and ended his life beside the ruins of his army. By nightfall, the three legions no longer existed as organized military units. One of Rome's greatest armies had been destroyed. The forest grew quiet. Arminius had won. Rome had suffered one of the worst defeats in its history. For Rome, the disaster was more than a military loss. 3 legionary eagles had been captured. The humiliation was immense. Arminius located Verus's body and removed the head. He sent it eastward to King Marabodius with a proposal for alliance. Marabodius declined. Instead, he forwarded the head to Rome, calculating that Roman retaliation remained the greater danger. When news reached Augustus, the emperor was devastated. Ancient writers claimed he repeatedly cried, "Verus, give me back my legions!" Rome eventually launched new campaigns into Germania under Germanicus. Villages burned. Tribes suffered. The empire sought revenge. 6 years later, Roman soldiers returned to the battlefield. Bones still covered the ground where the legions had fallen. Veterans walked silently among the bones. Some recognized decorations. Others found fragments of equipment once carried by lost comrades. One soldier reportedly recognized relics of former comrades. Helmets, weapons, and scattered remains lay among the trees. The dead were finally buried. But the memory of Teutoburg would outlive everyone who fought there. The victory made Arminius famous across Germania. To many tribes, he became the man who had achieved what few believed possible. He had not defeated Rome in open battle. He had defeated it through patience, intelligence, terrain, and a deep understanding of his enemy. Yet triumph did not bring lasting unity. The tribal alliances that destroyed the legions were never designed to become a permanent nation. Years later, Arminius would be killed by rival Germanic nobles. Not by Rome, not on a battlefield, by political enemies among his own people.
The irony was unmistakable. The man who united tribes against an empire could not permanently unite the tribes themselves. Rome never abandoned the frontier. But after Teutoburg, its ambitions in Germania became far more cautious and far more limited. Ancient historian Tacitus later preserved the memory of Arminius, describing him as a liberator of Germania and a formidable enemy of Rome. 3 days, 1 betrayal, 3 lost legions. Deep inside a rain-soaked forest, an empire learned that even the strongest power on earth could bleed. The trees of Teutoburg are silent now. The camps are gone. The roads have vanished. The warriors and governors have turned to dust. But somewhere beneath that soil lie fragments of weapons, armor, and bones. Small reminders of a disaster that changed countless lives. Marcus is gone. Verus is gone. Arminius is gone. Yet their choices still echo across 2,000 years of history. Because history is not only shaped by emperors and armies. Sometimes it turns on a warning ignored, a friendship trusted, and a road taken. In September of 9 AD, Rome entered the forest believing it controlled the future. 3 days later, the forest answered. The question is not how Rome lost. The question is, how many empires still believe they are invincible until the forest closes behind them?